Good evening, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. And so I realize that this is probably the worst time to do a live video. It's about 8 o'clock at night here in Australia, and I know that's probably like about 3 o'clock in the morning in the United States, where most people who are interested in these issues reside. But I thought I'd do it live anyway. I was asked on Messenger about Hoskier. And so I thought, well, instead of me just doing a bit of a search around and finding out information about Hoskier for one person, I may as well do a live video, because coming up in the Reformation Bible Society in August, I think it's August the 2nd, they are doing their whole conference on the book of Revelation. So there are several questions that are going to be asked. And obviously Hoskier has quite a lot to do with the book of Revelation. Now, Herman Hoskier, he collated the book of Revelation. He looked at about 200 manuscripts. And so I'm going to be reading some things about his life. Now, it seems like Jan Kranz has written a part of a book on Herman Hoskier, and his chapter that he wrote was called Herman Hoskier in the Spiritual World in the Future of New Testament Textual Scholarship. So I don't have access to that, which is a bit of a shame, because that seems to be where a lot of people are looking to for the source documentation. Now, for quite a long time, I've known that Herman Hoskier is, basically did practice the occult. And so I remember when I first heard this, I was like, oh, okay. It didn't, really, bother me, in a sense where it's like, well, Westcott and Hort were right into that type of thing. It's just a strange thing that people would get into. And so I was just like, oh, okay, so he's done work on collating manuscripts, but he's, been involved with the occult. Now, because he is a Textus Receptus advocate, now I would more so call him a majority text advocate, but he does claim to be a TR guy. He seems to be of the Burgonite camp. Oftentimes people will throw him into our camp. This whole thing of camps is so weird. It's so strange. It's just like a football team. They're barracking for the Reds. We're the Blues. And it's like, oh, he was on your team or whatever. And it's like, and the thing is, what's this guy doing? He's basically collating manuscripts and putting the readings down. And it's like, oh, okay. Like anyone, like Caspar Rene Gregory could have done this. Von Soden could have done this. But it just so happened to be a guy who was like, well, I follow Burgon, and I also advocate for the Textus Receptus. So I was reading some of the comments on this, and one person was saying, oh, how ironic, a guy who the TR people support and advocate for is an occultist, like Westcott and Hort, like they claim Westcott and Hort is, and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, why the obsession with pigeonholing people into a certain group? It just amazes me that people do this. It's like nationalism, like all white people are like this, or all black people are like this, or all Asians are like this. It's like, look, judge people according to their individual merits. If I was born on the same day as this guy, had the same handlebars mustache as him, if I studied the book of Revelation, it doesn't mean I even agree with him one little bit. You know what I mean? Now I can have someone who walks around with a King James and preaches similar to me, but I can think they're off the wall. I can think they can believe something that's heretical. They can just have one thing. They can say, look, you're saved by being water baptized. And I'm like, well, sorry, dude, that's heresy, So the whole thing of putting people into groups, into camps, it's an obsession. Critical text people, and there I am putting critical text people all in one camp. But what I find is people who are often coming against the Textus Receptus, King James preferred, King James only, but you get thrown into the same bag. They are often, like I'm talking about, Tim Berg, Mark Ward, Peter Montoro, Peter Gurry, Peter Mead, James White, Dan Wallace, these type of guys. They are constantly putting people into a certain bag. And it's quite tiring because what I find is a lot of people believe these guys. And so you constantly have to deal with, hey, I'm not a Ruckman. All the time. It's almost like every second comment that I make, I have to hold up a sign saying I'm not a Ruckman. I think Rippling is weird. I think, it's like, well, why should I have to do that? But so apparently, this guy is into spirit mediums to find the provenance of manuscripts. Now, I've said that over the years for probably about 10 years. Now, what's the spoiler of this video? What's the end conclusion? Well, actually, I don't know. And so that's the thing. I have said this quite a lot, like, Herman Hoskier has, consulted mediums to try and find out the provenance of manuscripts. And I guess I've sort of said it like, okay, well, it seems to be an agreed to fact. But because it's coming from Jan Kranz, I just don't know. I seriously don't know. Which isn't a good sign, because there are some other people who would say things and I would naturally go, well, what they're saying, I can believe that, and say someone like, if, Dwayne Green said something or TurretinFan said something, I would usually think that they would have thought about it and done their homework on it. Not like they might make a mistake like we all do, but they wouldn't purposely manipulate the data to make something out to be what it's not. So when I was looking behind this and it's like, oh, okay, Jan Kranz is involved with this, I was like, okay, I'm going to really have to look into this afresh. And so I remember it was probably about 6 years ago on the ETC blog, people were talking about Herman Hoskier. And I was just like, oh, okay, apparently he was into the occult, And I don't even really advocate for Dean Burgon. Like I say, well, read his books, but I also say, read Pickering's book, just not because I agree with everything here, because he advocates for Family 35. But he has a lot of very good stuff to say about Westcott and Hort and the rest of it. So it's a bit like, advocating for someone who might be a theistic evolutionist. They might have some good argumentation, but at the ultimate, I believe in 6-day creation. I believe the earth is, 6,000 years old. So obviously I disagree with that, but they might have good argumentation. There are some, scholars out there who have some very good things to say, but I disagree with some of what they're saying as well. So I guess that's the thing. Everyone is on a spectrum of truth. Some people, they have 100% truth. Whatever they're saying is going to be backed up by facts and stats and figures. Other people, they have a mix. They might be 80% there. And that can be really annoying too, because you're used to them saying something correct. And when they don't, you're like, oh, but then you get down to, false prophets and things like that, probably would be like 70, 60%. They're obviously someone who's just going to lie outright all the time. They would get caught out. And so they would have no potency. The potency comes when you offer, 10 real apples, but then you sneak in a couple of rotten ones. Not when you just have 10 rotten apples, or else no one really bothers with you. And you have to have some redeemable quality about you to be a good deceiver. So basically, this video is going to be me just searching around looking for information about Herman Hoskier on the internet. Now, I'm going to start. So this is Herman here. Herman, in Australia, whenever someone has a mustache like this, we call it a handlebars mustache, because it's sort of like, they're it's like riding a Harley or something like that. I had a friend, Handlebars Henry, and he had a big, he had like the Monopoly board guy mustache, and he looked hilarious. And, but yeah, that's why he got the nickname Handlebars Henry. And he also rode a big motorbike. So, so AD 33 is in the house. So this is Herman Hoskier. So let's just dig into what's being said about Herman. So there was this post 27th of September 2016 Spirit Testimony by Dirk Jonkind. And he says, when Hoskier, in his Concerning the Text of the Apocalypse, talks about spirit testimony, he means something different than what Peter Gurry was talking about here. So Peter Gurry was talking about the canon and Kruger's book and a few other things. So this is taken from this page in Hoskier. So I'll just open this up and we'll read through this. So it says, Spirit Testimony, I have laid under tribute for what it may be worth, one of the most reliable and successful of our investigators of psychic or intercosmic phenomena by dragging into my net at 21:4. So this is a book about the book of Revelation. So it would be Revelation 21:4. The only example of which I have cognizance of spirit communication from an entity who was a bit of a textual critic, or at any rate one who was acquainted with various readings. I refer to a communication of the whole of this verse from the air obtained by Baron Goldenstube on the 28th of October 1856 in the presence of a reliable witness, Count d'Aurochs. See page 81 in plate 6, number 34, where the writer has placed Hotheos in brackets. This was quite an interesting adjunct to our studies. It was not a case of automatic writing. In all these experiments, the writing was done by the communicator without human hands or instruments. And so it says to see this, the reality of spirits in Paris, 1857. Later the verse, ta in ta prota is not clear and maybe a sa. It looks like the writing of a modern Greek, etc. So he just talks about the Tufta and Aleph and the Syriac. But so this is posted as showing that he had he was into spirit communication. Okay, so one thing that I was looking at, so this is 1856, but when we actually look at Hoskier, now I'll just grab him up in Wikipedia. I think Hoskier, Herman Hoskier. Herman Hosk. And so, like I said, this is just going to be a study of Herman Hoskier. I'm just this is how I would just go through and study something. And so I would usually start with Wikipedia. I know people say don't do that, but it's usually one of the first places I go to. One of the reasons is because what you can do, you can read through the article. Now, usually that will point you in a few directions, but also, like, you can see all the works here. I don't know anywhere else where it has this type of easily understandable, an easily understandable list of his works like that, where you can go to, where is it? The World Catalog and a few other places. But usually they're a bit hit and miss. And some of these have direct links straight to the books in archive or Google, and so there's quite a lot you can go through here, which is fantastic. And usually, like, I understand people in colleges and universities, they say to stay away from Wikipedia pretty much because anyone can change it. But the issue is, if you're just studying for your own research, it's the first place that you should go to, because what it usually is a broad understanding of the topic. You should understand what everyone thinks about a certain topic before you go off into your own little theories, So Herman Hoskier. So notice this, it's in 1864 that he was born. Now, I'm looking at this here, and it says 1836. Oh, sorry, 56. So that looks like it's 8 years before he was born. Okay, so that's an interesting little bit of information there. But let's just continue. So he died in 1938. He was a biblical scholar, British textual critic, the son of a merchant banker, Herman Hoskier. And he died in 1904, so his father had the same name. As a textual critic of the New Testament, Hoskier generally, but not entirely, supported the text type known as the Byzantine text type against the Alexandrian text type. The text types are groups of different New Testament manuscripts which share specific or generally related readings, which then differ from each other group, and thus conflicting readings can separate out the groups. These are then used to determine the original text as published. There are three main groups with names: Alexandrian, Western, and Byzantine. In one of the most famous publications, Codex B and its allies, he compares the text with the two leading witnesses of the Alexandrian text type, Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus. So to me, they've just made up these categories. The vast majority of categories are what would be labeled as Byzantine. So having a category where you have Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus together in a group, when they differ so much from each other, it's like chalk and cheese. But they've put them in the same group. And the Western group, really, I mean, that's been questioned if it even really exists. It's sort of like a bit of a phantom. But anyway, it does seem like sometimes you'll have the Textus Receptus reading, oh, the Byzantine majority text goes against it, oh, the Western goes against it, oh, the Alexandrian goes against it. So they voted out like it's a democracy to get the word of God, when you could be voting out something that's very clearly should be there by these type of witnesses. Or sometimes you have 2 against 2, this type of thing. So he's written this book, Codex B and its allies. So with this publication, he showed how many significant disagreements these supposedly best witnesses of the Alexandrian text have. Hoskier attempted to demonstrate that Vaticanus presents a text which has been conformed to the Coptic versions. He also compared the text of minuscule 700 with the Textus Receptus, and he noted 2,724 differences between the two. Hoskier collated every known Greek manuscript of the Apocalypse up to the year 1918, which took him 30 years to complete. The result of this work was published in 1929 concerning the text of the Apocalypse. Hoskier shows parallels between Papyrus 46 and the Ethiopic version and the Pauline epistles. And so here are his works, a full account and collation of the Greek cursive Codex Evangelium 604 concerning the genesis of the versions of the New Testament. And so he goes through, he's obviously right into collating the lost commentary of Occamenius on the Apocalypse. That would be an interesting one to look into, because we're sort of focusing a little bit on the Book of Revelation as we get onto that Reformation Bible Society conference. And so, yeah, you can look at external links, Internet Archive works by Hoskier. Let's just open that up and you can check out some of these books. So here we have, Herman Hoskier. And some of his writing is very interesting. So what we're looking at tonight was we're trying to find out information of whether he was into the occult. So this has been the claim. I've even said this myself. So we really want to back up every claim that we make. And so let's get into some of the comments of this Spirit Testimony article. So as we go down, we see Peter Mullick says, was he serious? How could one apply Ruckmanian principles to readings arising from what he calls psychic or intercosmic phenomena? Parker Intro 231. Someone said, is it April Fool's already? So listen to what James Snap Jr. says. He says, I have tried to look into the details of Hoskier's religious beliefs without much success. As I stated in September of last year at the Text of the Gospels, so I'm going to jump onto there next. So I'll copy that. We will open that up and we'll check that out. So on this page of his introduction, Hoskier stated that for what it may be worth, he had included in the apparatus a reading in Revelation 21:4 that was claimed to have been obtained via a seance-like spirit channeling session in 1856. The basis for this appears to have been nothing more than a book written by Baron Goldenstube in French in 1857. I suspect that Hoskier regarded this as merely a curiosity, but included it in his apparatus in order to maintain with absolute veracity his claims to have collated every Greek manuscript that testified about the Book of Revelation. And so I think he's saying that this book of Hoskier is online. Oh no, here is that book about the phenomenon about spirits and things like that. Okay. So it's interesting that James Snap points out that he said, Hoskier stated for what it may be worth. So I guess what I can see that James Snap Jr. is doing here, he's sort of saying, well, perhaps he's just stating that, because he's leaving no stone unturned when it comes to the Book of Revelation. I guess, when I was going through and writing my book on Revelation 16:5, because it had a lot to do with the Tetragrammaton and the name of Jehovah, oftentimes I'd find myself on a obscure website that's run by a Jehovah's Witness. So in my book, I clearly go through and talk about how the Father, the Son, and the Spirit are Jehovah. I believe in the Trinity and that type of thing. But sometimes I was going through knowing that the person that I'm reading is Unitarian, or they're a Jehovah's Witness, but no one else has looked into something. And so there was a lot written about Elias Hutter and his Dodecaglot, his 12-language Bible. And there wasn't really there wasn't many people talking about it. And so the Jehovah's Witnesses, they were talking about it because he uses the name Jehovah in the New Testament. in some of the places, in a sense of he's done his own Hebrew edition. But what he did, he actually, like when Saul was knocked off his horse, this is Paul before his name was changed for the Gentiles. So Saul was knocked off his horse, and he said, "Who are you, Lord?" He said, "Who are you, Adonai?" And it says, and Jehovah said, it says, and Jesus said, "I am Jehovah, whom you are persecuting." And so it clearly says Jesus is Jehovah, which I found quite ironic that the Jehovah's Witnesses were talking about this type of thing. But anyway, so it seems like James Snapp is saying it's a bit like that. In my book, I would say, look, I'm getting this information from this person. And actually, one of the places where I discovered in Revelation chapter 11, verse 17, that Metzger, one of the weights behind his choice of omitting the one which is and was, and it should say, and is to come in Revelation 11:17, where is to come was deleted, this Mormon article went right into it. And when I read through it, I was like, okay, it's written by Mormons, so obviously you're a bit defensive, you're double checking everything. But I didn't reference that type of thing, but I was reading it, and I was like, wow, they're saying that Metzger omitted that reading of is to come because he felt like the millennium had come. So that's usually like even the Stephen Edison type of eschatology. They say, well, that's the millennium. I've heard lots of people say that Revelation 11 is the millennium. But if you have is to come there, well, Jesus hasn't come yet at the end of that chapter. And so you'd have to have the millennium backwards. And that's why some people do that. They have the millennium happening before the coming of Jesus. And so quite an interesting thing, but I do follow the Textus Receptus in the King James there. And, but yeah, so, you can, obviously when you're doing a study into anything, you read everyone. I read everyone. Like I'll read James Snapp's material, even though we disagree. I'll read, Dan Wallace's material, James White's material. I'll just read everything and come to my conclusions through that. And then sometimes reread it and then come to different conclusions, then reread it again. And then I'll start making my own solid conclusions after being saturated with the issue. And so pretty much that's what I see James Snapp Jr. saying here is he's not sure if he's into the occult. He seems to be saying for what it may be worth, and he's throwing this out there. That someone had been looking into this verse. Okay. So this is what I was saying about Peter Montoro. So he was part of the Textual Confidence Collective with Mark Ward and Timothy Berg and others. I looked up this selection in context. It appears to be quite serious. What is ironic to me is that for those familiar with the King James Version only, Textus Receptus only movement, it is Westcott and Hort that are frequently falsely accused of involvement in spiritism. And Hoskier is claimed, again falsely, as one of the heroes of a TR position, which actually makes this somewhat funny. So what's interesting here is Peter Montoro has, or if he actually did this after the Textual Confidence Collective, he wouldn't say this because they had to admit that Westcott and Hort were involved in the occult. They did attend seances, and they had to admit that. Now, whether it was an ongoing thing and all the rest of it, well, yeah, some people speculate it was. I did some homework into it and found that when Peter Montoro, Mark Ward, Tim Berg, Elijah Hixson, when they were concrete on, okay, well, they went to, it was one of them, I can't remember if it's Westcott or Hort, but one of them went to this particular seance, that it was around that period of time, it was only like a year or so difference, where they were talking about the villainous Textus Receptus and that vile text based upon late manuscripts. And, they devoted their life to making a text that wasn't based on late manuscripts and all this sort of stuff. And so it makes you wonder whether they got that revelation from the spirit world. It's quite an interesting thing. So here, what Peter Montoro is saying, Westcott and Hort are frequently, and he says falsely, accused of involvement in spiritism. He wouldn't say that today. I don't think anyone would say that today if you've watched the Textual Confidence Collective. They downplay it right down to like, oh, they didn't do anything wrong. And then it's like, oh, except we know this one seance they went to and maybe this other one. And it's sort of like they're trying to cover it up. But just their involvement with George Van Smith is damning enough. But, and it says Hoskier is claimed, again falsely, to be one of the heroes of the TR only position. I think what is usually said about Hoskier is that he defended the Textus Receptus. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, Dean Burgon was not a friend of the Textus Receptus. Now, he believed it was way better than what Westcott and Hort had, but he advocated for the traditional text and not for the Textus Receptus. And now a lot of people don't realize this or know this, or when they hear this, they panic because one of their heroes, who sometimes they've read the material of Burgon, one of their heroes is sort of like not so much a hero anymore. And I think the thing is, you've just got to understand that Burgon was a majority text type of guy. Now, he didn't openly attack the King James. He didn't openly attack the Textus Receptus, but he did advocate that it needed updating. And at the end of his life, with Miller writing some of his books after Burgon had died, collecting his works, etc., he advocated for quite a lot of changes in the Textus Receptus. And so I don't advocate for a change in the Textus Receptus. Maybe a few little tiny little points here and there, like, the final amen of Ephesians. It's like, well, I think it should be there. It's not there in the Trinitarian Bible Society edition. But then again, if you look at the J. Green one, he just has it there and says that this is from the Trinitarian Bible Society. I think people instinctively know it should be there, just because it wasn't in the printed edition of the 1611 in the original King James doesn't, most people see that as a typo. It was fixed in, I think, 1616. But anyway, that's another issue. So he's saying this is sort of ironic. I sort of look at, like if someone turned around and said to me that Burgon was involved with the occult, I'd just go, oh, okay. Like, it doesn't really affect me. Like if someone said, hey, Peter Ruckman got every morning, squeezed chicken guts over his head and did a voodoo dance in a pentagram, I'd just go, oh, okay. Because these people are not, they're not tied to me. I'm not genealogically tied to these people. Where what I find American apologists, it's like one of the first things they learn is if you can find a link back to someone, you can just do this guilt by association thing. You can pigeonhole them and find out what denomination they are and just label them, because there's going to be someone bad in that denomination. Find out, someone who believes similar things. If you go, oh, I believe in a pre-trib rapture, oh, Darby, and just all these weird, it's firstly it's the Masons, then it's the Jesuits, and then it's the, it just have a list of occult people who invented the rapture theory and all this sort of stuff. And so you're just like, well, actually, I get my rapture theory from the Bible. That's where I get it from. And when I don't, when I'm doing a debate and I don't go the usual route of, the old IFB sort of thing and just sort of parroting stuff that you hear in church, people go, oh, you've got a weird eschatology. It's like, well, doesn't that prove that I'm not just parroting these guys, that I'm studying it for myself? But anyway, so here's Maurice Robinson. He says Hoskier apparently was clearly involved in various areas related to aspects of spiritism. So this is from Maurice Robinson. Now, Maurice Robinson is usually very well respected from all camps, from all sides, and so he wouldn't just say something that was, harebrained, or I disagree with his majority text stance ultimately, but he is a bona fide scholar. He has studied the Principe Adulterae probably more than anyone alive. And so let me read that again. Hoskier apparently was clearly involved in various areas related to aspects of Spiritism, including his particular views on reincarnation and other related matters. These are documented in his lesser known books. Now it says cited on Wikipedia and elsewhere, such as The Back of Beyond, Immortality, What is Nirvana, and In Tune with the Universe. So he's got these 4 books. Now, I've only looked at his books, which are Codex B and its allies, and also mostly use his collation on the Book of Revelation. That's been very handy, especially with Revelation 16:5, looking at Beatus of Libana, Hymo Habustadensis, the Ethiopic. This is all mentioned in Hoskier. So this is mentioned in 1929, that type of thing. So that's really where James White should have gone for looking to see manuscript evidence, because he said it wasn't in the Ethiopic, but it's been in there since 1929. Herman Hoskier clearly says it. And we've double-checked all those sources and found them to be correct. So Jan Kranz, he weighs in and says, for a full treatment, see my article, Jan Kranz, Hoskier in the Spirit World in the Future of the New Testament Textual Scholarship, from H.C. Hoskier to the Edito Critica Maya and beyond. So this is by Allen, and that was in 2019. So Jan Kranz has a chapter in there, which is page 69 to 77. Now, I don't have access to that. I've tried searching for it, so let's just try searching again. Here we go. So I looked at these ones. Obviously, they're purple. Textual Nostalgia. It looks like it gets a few mentions. Maybe World Catalog. But it looks like a really interesting book to read, actually. Okay, so this is Herman Hoskier's collation of, it says Evangelism 604. I don't think it is Evangelism. I think it's Evangelio or something like that. It might just have been auto-corrected. Okay. So, yeah, so this looks like it's a different chapter. Yeah, so here is Jan Kranz, Hoskier in the Spiritual World. And look, the next one is Jennifer Nost. It just seems so strange that they would team up with someone like Jennifer Nost, who is so liberal. But, these people are part of the Academy. I mean, Jennifer Nost is basically like a Bart Ehrman, but writing to the LGBTQ+, the updated one, the plus. And, you got a few other, you got Tommy Wasserman there, who's written with Jennifer Nost. So yeah, it just makes me wonder where this is going. But Evangelium 604, because it had up here the heading Evangelism 604. So this is by Jennifer Nost, which is interesting. So that would be interesting to read. Actually, is it the whole book? It looks like it. Oh no, it's not. It's just her section, page 80 there. Jennifer Nost. Yeah, there we go. I guess maybe it gets spiced up so he's, raunchy. Because most of what Jennifer Knuss writes about is, lust. And that's why it's a woman caught in adultery. It's always something spicy. But, she was the main principal editor for the New Revised Standard Version. I think it's a Reader's Edition or Updated Edition or something like that. But, yeah, I can't believe that she's heading up a Bible translation. It's quite amazing to me. I can't understand why people revere such heretical people. I mean, to me, it's like that. In a secular example, it's like these people are. When we're talking about heresy, it's almost like committing a crime against the word of God. And so these people are like bank robbers, and they're openly just part of running a bank or something. They're, I guess it's not a good example because banks are pretty bad nowadays. But I just can't understand why these people, Bart Ehrmans and Jennifer Knuss, and these people can just be part of the academy and no one really mentions anything. And James White doesn't really talk about it much. And I actually listened to Mark Ward, and he it was like he was going to mention something, but then he didn't. And I was like, you should really go all the way and just explain who she is and what she believes. But maybe he doesn't know. But anyway, so what I might do, because I'm still sort of searching for a few files, so I might go to Garrick v. Allen, and that might give us a little bit more. Okay. Not really. Son of God and Son of Man in Daniel. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing much here. Anyway, I'll shut that one down and we'll just continue on. Manuscripts of the Book of Revelation collated by H.C. Hoskier. Okay. So I think that's what I opened up in World Catalog. No, that's a different index there. World Catalog. Yeah, here we go. So the future of New Testament textual scholarship. So it's from Hoskier to the ECM. Okay. Let's view all formats. Maybe it's somewhere. Actually, I did want more information. Well, I can go to the Australian Catholic University Library, or I can pick it up for $218. Let's see all the formats. Sign in to view contents. This is the problem. They're putting a lot of this material online, but then you can't access it. It's like, so that's why I like Wikipedia too, because it usually just puts you to archive. And I did like the fact that Jan Kranz's book, Beyond What Is Written, is on archive, even though I disagree with the book. At least I could critique it without spending, $250 to buy it. Okay, so Book of Revelation, early Jewish textual culture. Okay, so that's the one that I'm looking at. It says also available as an ebook. Let's go back here. I can't understand why it's available as an ebook. So why wouldn't it just, send me to a shop or something? It just seems to block me. 2 editions. Yep, back to getting blocked. Okay, let's forget that. $218. Here we go. No customer reviews there. Barnes and Noble. Okay. Anyway, we'll just keep going through this. So that was Jan Kranz. So he's written on this, and I guess, if anyone finds that online, or if Jan Kranz, he might even be told about this and told that maybe I'm interested in it. He might even send me a PDF of it. That'll be interesting. Okay, so there is another blog. Let's grab this. Now, this was just talking about Hebrews 11:11, but Elijah Hixson, I'm pretty sure he talks about Hoskier. Was it this one? No, it wasn't. He's actually a bit of a caricature of Hoskier here with all these books. Okay. So I just saw a note. Someone was saying check eBay. Okay, so let's go to eBay. $600. $600. Yeah, anyway, I don't think that one's cheap at the moment. So this one looks interesting. Maybe I've opened this one before. But anyway, I'll just open that in the background. So Calvin says facts, stats, and figures. Hilly Billy is in the house, living the dream. Thanks for the advice to go to eBay. Yeah, I do find, I used to find books, rare books on eBay, and it was the place to go to. Now a lot of it's on archive, thankfully. I'll get rid of that. So yeah, I'll go through James Snap's article here, because he said he mentions Hoskier. Those wishing to investigate further may consult Herman Hoskier's 1929 book concerning the text of the Apocalypse, in which he collated every manuscript of Revelation that was known to him, and also separated the manuscripts into groups and subgroups according to shared distinctive readings. It should be noted as a point of caution that on this page of his introduction, Hoskier stated, for what it is worth. Okay, so this is pretty much what he's said earlier. He had included in the apparatus a reading in Revelation 21:4 that was claimed to have been obtained in a seance-like spirit channeling session in 1856. The basis of this appears to have been nothing more than a book written by Baron Goldenstube in French in 1857. I suspect that Hoskier regarded this as merely a curiosity, but included it in his apparatus in order to maintain with absolute veracity his claim to have collected every Greek manuscript that testified about the text of Revelation. Okay, so that's what he says about Hoskier. I'll just see what else he's got written about Hoskier. Okay, Hoskier. That's that one. And that's about it for James Snap Jr. So maybe it's this one. So there is another book here. Okay, so before I go to this one here, which is by Elijah Hixson, I'll just show you this book here. So this is the Allen book that I was showing you, and he does mention, I looked up the word medium here. It comes up 4 times, and here it says his philosophy is important because it is never entirely divorced from his academic work, as Jan Kranz's article in this volume incisively demonstrates. Hoskier appeals to mediums and spirit guides to enforce his textual decisions, and even includes readings created by a spirit at a 19th century seance. He also comments on a copy of a letter sent to J. Rendell Harris that he is in slight touch himself with the other side. And so it's got reference to 19 here. Now, I'll just read through a little bit here. So it says, these moves are undergirded by his philosophic ideals laid out in his panentheistic treatise that were part of a much larger reenchantment of the world known as theosophy, a movement that garnered a significant amount of popular interest after the war in Europe, even though its origins can be traced to the early 19th century. 2 of these works are written under the approximately esoteric pseudonym Signpost. Although these writings at times are prescient in their suggestion that the world was hurtling toward another major conflict, the prose is often as incohesive as its method is incoherent. So they're giving an example here. In his self-proclaimed creed in the form of a prayer, What is Nirvana? Hoskier builds his case using familiar Christian language, for example, and so, great Father, see, I dare call thee Father, taught by him of lowly Nazareth, thine angel messenger, Gabriel, God, man, I bow my head, I bow my knees, I bow my dust-clad spirit, and according to thee, all good, all wise, all just, all true, all pure, be me and I thee. So yeah, it's quite a wordy document. As you can tell, I'm struggling with some of these words. So he does have 19 here. So that was the one where it says, someone asked, was Hoskier serious about including readings from spirit communications in the apparatus of concerning the text? The answer must undoubtedly be affirmative. Okay, so, but as James Snap has pointed out, perhaps he was just saying, look, I've looked everywhere. What about this? And he didn't really care for it that much, So it says, Hoskier in tune with the universe, and Hoskier's the back of beyond. Although Hoskier wrote the preface for In Tune with the Universe in his own name, in which he declares that Signpost has lifted a corner of the veil by his differentiation between the vibrational world and the non-vibrational. And although Hoskier is included in the title page, the back of Beyond. Okay, so it's quite complicated. It's quite complex. But I am doubting that. I'm sort of in agreement with James Snap here. I am doubting that the main objection of him agreeing with it, because the way that I had heard this was that it was he consulted spirit mediums, okay? But it's actually, no, he quotes a book where someone else has consulted a spirit medium, and he's saying, well, for what it's worth, what about this? And so that could be, I guess it's got to be examined more. It could be tongue-in-cheek. So Elijah Hixson, he says, Yarncrans reports that Hoskier, on whose work everyone depends when trying to discredit Sinaiticus and Vaticanus by appealing to the 3,000 differences between them in the Gospels. So the thing is too, like Hoskier, you know, he's a text critic. Do I agree with him on everything? No. Do I agree with him on some things? Yes. Did he do a lot of work that was very valuable? Yes. He collated 200 manuscripts of Revelation, which is great. Now, he was a Textus Receptus advocate, or that's what he said he was. Would he advocate for the TR as much as I would? Probably not. But you can see that these guys don't like him. He's saying that Sinaiticus and Vaticanus have these 3,000 differences, and that is used a lot by TR advocates. They quote that. I quote that. There were 17 other types of tabulation that Hoskier could have used, but he didn't. And if he'd done that, there would have been thousands and thousands more differences just in the Gospels alone. And so you can see why someone would have a bias towards him. Now, I'm still not saying whether he did a seance or didn't. I'm studying. That's what I'm doing tonight. So, I got asked the question about this, and so I'm like, okay, well, let's study it. Let's prove this. And so that's what I'm doing. So Hoskier was also interested in whether Mark's Gospel was written in Greek or Latin. According to a letter dated the 25th of March, 1928, Yarn's summary, Hoskier consults a famous medium. Okay, so this is what Yarn Kran says. To have a spirit settle an important question of New Testament textual research. Luckily for Markan scholarship, Mrs. Curran gave the correct answer. Patience Worth, when asked the question by me, says Mark's Gospel was not first written in Latin, Yarncrans Hoskier. So I really need to get this article by Yarncrans. And so I'm going to go through some of these comments. Hilly Billy says, Nick, I mentioned a volume in a chat room last week. 3 days later, United Parcel Service brought me a copy. Okay. Some kind soul bought and sent it to me, but they had paid a bit more attention. If they had paid a bit more attention, they would have known that I already had it. I just thanked them and wanted them to feel good about it. It was very sweet. Calvin, how you doing? So Calvin says, hey, brother Hilly, great catch on the time out and touchdown for the audio call on Nick's last stream. Wasn't here live, but I definitely noticed those greatest moderating I've seen in a while. And so, yeah, no, I was chatting away and the video didn't have sound for ages. And some of these live ones that I do on the weekend, you can have 30 or 40 people watching. and the comments are just like coming up every 2 seconds. And so I start going through it and I get an hour behind. And then I'm going through and I'm like, man, the sound hasn't been on for an hour on the video. But luckily I was talking quite a lot. So I just played the 5-minute clip, and hopefully everyone sort of got it. But anyway, let's keep going through this. So Jan Kranz is saying, so this is a summary. Hoskier consults a famous medium to ask this. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is a separate thing than what was mentioned earlier, but we'll just keep going through these details. So this was a year before Hoskier published the work on Revelation that included spirit communication as part of his text critical evidence for a variant in Revelation 21:4, details as cited above. Okay. So when he's saying details as cited above, I don't think that Hoskier is even mentioned here at all. So this is not the same article that deals with Hoskier and that French book that talks about someone contacting a spirit medium. Okay, so yeah, you can see when I search for Hoskier, it only comes up when Elijah Hixson talks about it. So he's saying as part of his text critical evidence, details in the article cited above. So yeah, so he's saying in this article there's more to it. Okay, so he consulted a medium here. Hoskier consults a famous medium. Okay. So Mrs. Curran, I'm going to look this up. Mrs. Curran, medium. Patience Worth. Okay, so this looks more like the person who Hoskier contacted. Maybe Hoskier is mentioned here. No. But this person is definitely a spirit medium. Patience Worth was allegedly a disembodied spirit contacted by Pearl Lenore Curran. Okay. So it's just weird, weird stuff, So perhaps this is a different occasion. Perhaps this is the one that that people are talking about, and that I was referring to, that he contacted a spirit medium to get the provenance of a manuscript, and so that seems to be exactly what Hixson is saying here. And I guess whenever this was written, this is 2021. I have known this for quite a long time, though, so I'm not sure. And I did think that I got it from Peter Gurry for some reason. I was looking for Peter Gurry and Hoskier everywhere. I couldn't find him saying it, but maybe it was Hixson. So note for clarity, this comment is about Hoskier, not about everyone who ever asks whether Mark was originally written in Latin. Well, okay, so it seems like Elijah Hixson is very careful that he doesn't want to demonize people. If it was to do with TR people, he would just say they're all King James onlyists. They're all textual absolutists, and he would just put us into some label. But he's very clear to make sure that he doesn't want to put his friends under any type of labels. He's very courteous to his friends. In all fairness, Jan writes, it would be absurd to judge Hoskier's scholarly work in general based on this instance of bad judgment, or worse, on the perceived lack of Christian quality of his beliefs. Such ad hominem arguments are best left to those who do not know better. But the thing is, all Hoskier is doing is evaluating things. So he is basically creating an apologetic for his belief that the Byzantine Textus Receptus is accurate. And he's going through and collating manuscripts. So Caspar Rene Gregory, Scrivener, Burgon, a lot of these people, Tischendorf, collated manuscripts. Some of them were Unitarian, some of them were not Orthodox. And so, yeah, to me, Hoskier is just sort of like another one of those, but he does seem to be on the TR side of the fence. And so, but he's not making a Bible. So that's the difference between these guys and someone like Westcott and Hort. Westcott and Hort made a different Bible with 2,900 less words, 8,000 changes. It's a different work. And so, and Hilly Billy says, I've been trying to be more specific in the comments I made to Unique. I understand that by the time you read them, the subject has changed 4 times. Yeah. That poor dude, Calvin, we've seen him 1,000 times. He learned a little Bible and suddenly fancied himself expert. So it says here that Elijah Hixson agrees. He says, and I agree. But if doctrinal purity is held as the standard used to dismiss the work of some scholars by the same people who use Hoskier's work to discredit Codices, Sinaiticus, and Vaticanus, Hoskier's beliefs and practices should matter to them. Well, there's a difference. If you're an apologist, if you're just saying, okay, you're an archaeologist and you're saying, well, this rock proves that in Genesis this is true, or the Red Sea parting is true, whatever. You're not actually rewriting the Bible. So that's the difference. We're looking at Westcott and Hort and saying, why are they hanging around George Vance Smith, a Unitarian, didn't believe in the deity of Christ? He was like a Jehovah's Witness. Why are Westcott and Hort hanging around this guy, let alone letting him make decisions on the text, let alone, just being with him and having communion with him and making sure he's part of their team? Why would you do that unless you're a weirdo yourself? And so this is the problem. You can look at Hoskier, and I can have Hoskier or not. It doesn't really matter. I mean, someone like Caspar Rene Gregory or von Soden, or people who have collated manuscripts over the years. I mean, sometimes you look at their work and go, well, who were these people? But their material is just like sort of almost neutral because it's just the data. Now, other people, they skew data, like someone like Metzger. He's not neutral. He's talking about things and he's got all these theories like Bart Ehrman. He's not neutral. You wouldn't trust him to come out with something that was just data. You'd always expect some little twist here and there. And so, when it comes to Hoskier, and I don't just agree with everything with Hoskier. There are things that I'm looking at the moment where Hoskier's made mistakes, where he said that Erasmus said this, and I'm looking at it going, no, that's not what Erasmus has. And I've got the document right in front of me of what Erasmus has, and he's 1527, and Hoskier says it says one thing, and I'm looking at it going, no, it says the other thing. And it's only just a difference of a space, but it's wrong. And so I don't agree with him all the time, but he didn't write a new Bible. If he'd written a whole new book of Revelation or whatever, it's like, okay, that's bad. But Westcott and Hort did. That's why we're in the mess that we're in today. That's why we have 4 million Bibles out there. That's why we have so much difference between the NIV and the King James, the ESV and the King James, or just the NIV editions. You just compare them and they're so different. But I mean, that's usually to do with just how the translators want to work. But the underlying text of these are different. They are corrupted. They're an abomination in my eyes. And that type of thing is why we hold Westcott and Hort up to a higher standard. And we say, look, these people working on the text, like Jesuit Carlo Martini working on the Nestle Alarm text, why have a Jesuit there? Why fellowship with this guy? Why is Metzger and Kurt Ahlin, why are these guys involved with this? It's not just a neutral thing that they're doing. They're deciding whether words should be in or out. And Christians are going, on, let's just not even talk about it. No, it's different if someone's just, crunching the data and going, okay, that's what I looked at all the manuscripts. Here's what they said. Collating something like even Tommy Wasserman, Elijah Hixson would have to agree that Tommy Wasserman, in his work in Jude, he did a good job. Now he doesn't believe in an eternal hell. I think that's heretical. I think he's liberal. And especially to write books with Jennifer Knust. I mean, who would do that? What Christian do you know who would just go, hey, I'm going to write a book with someone who's a heretic, You'd have to have problems yourself. And so to equate, the type of thing with Westcott and Hort to Hoskier just pointing out that there's 3,000 differences in Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, you mightn't like that fact, but you can't really disprove it, can you? It's just a stat. So regardless of whether that was, Scrivener who found that out, or Westcott who wrote that, or whatever, or Hoskier or Burgon, it's just a stat, So Matthew Rose says, Christians are to be lovers of truth, and therefore truth must be accepted regardless of the source. As far as I'm concerned, Hoskier and others can collate, tabulate, and speculate till the cows come home, albeit I believe it's warranted if a Christian takes exception to a man like Hoskier editing, revising, and or reconstructing the Greek New Testament, especially for church use. It would be similar to Hoskier preaching and teaching the Bible when he is neither a believer nor called to do so. We have historical examples to learn from here: the Sumerian Pentateuch, the LXX, Marcion, etc., all of which fail to hit the mark. So unless we are to believe that there is no longer any rightful custodian of the Bible, perhaps we have a glaring blind spot that needs to be addressed here. So anyway, I think that's all that they mentioned there about Hoskier. So, yeah. Well, obviously, because I've highlighted it. So I'm just going to shut some of these down. So, this podcast might just leave more questions than answers. So, Calvin says, I really pray most modern text critics are simply deceived and not lost souls fighting for the adversary, and am thankful that my judgment means naught. Hilly Billy says, Cal, I wonder how many are being misled by darkness and thinking they are doing good. Yeah, I mean, there are deceptive spirits out there. So let's just shut that one down. So I'll continue going through this one that has medium in it. So we were reading here, Hoskier appeals to mediums and spirit guides, and it was quite wordy, this one, so it was quite hard to read, but it does seem like he's sort of saying he's part of some esoteric group, which is interesting. But then he's saying he's cloaked it all in Christian language. So is that, that's got to be proven. Okay. So let's look for medium again. So we've got medium. Okay, so here we go. The book demonstrates that Hoskier's philosophical and religious views are derived in part from 19th century reports of conversations between spirits and French mediums, and it is clear that he has had first-hand experiences in such settings. Okay. Okay, so it says here, this looks like what Elijah Hixson was talking about. Hoskier carried on long-lasting and rather intimate correspondence with Harris, touching on a range of issues, including Harris's survival of a German torpedoing off Corsica. So I won't go through that. It says, among Hoskier's correspondence with Harris exists a short work by Hoskier, unpublished, reflecting on his appreciation of patience worth. So that was the spirit medium that we were looking at before on Wikipedia. That seems to be the spirit that they've discovered, called patience worth. A supposed spirit of a 17th century woman in a long-term communication with Mrs. Courant of St. Louis, appreciation of PW by an outsider signed by HCH, along with a copy of a book comprised by patients through the medium of Miss Courant, 19th of December 1921. The earliest letter to Harris, 7th of May 1917, is characteristic of Hoskier's idiosyncrasies, discussing Harris's escape of the boat called torpedoes, etc. Harris also uses Hoskier as a sounding board for expensive purchases of manuscripts, which Hoskier at times offers to fund on his behalf. Hoskier also informs Harris that he had met patients in person. Okay, that's interesting. So that is definitely an occult type of reference, since the family that received the spirit communication named an adopted child after the spirit. There you go. Their letters are not always entirely friendly in tone. Very interesting. It's interesting, it says here, following the war, Hoskier resumed his text critical work, closely aligned with Henry A. Saunders of the University of Michigan, as well as other prominent scholars. So it's interesting that Saunders, in his 1935 collation of Codex Alexandrinus, I think it is, there's some reading that he has. It's actually the one, no, it's Ephesians 3:9. And he was looking at, I think it was Codex Alexandrinus, and he has basically the exact reading that Jeff Riddle mentions. And so I had said, well, he was in 1939. He's obviously not a TR, King James only, sort of guy. But if he's friends with Hoskier, there could have been, I'm not saying his reading was biased there. I might even quickly get it up just to show you why his name sort of triggered this thought. So Ephesians 3:9. I think if I just type it in Google, mine will come up first on our Bible Hub. I better type in Textus Receptus. Here we go, Ephesians 3:9. So you can see here, Henry A. Saunders, the same guy, 1939 book, the 3rd century papyrus of the Codex of the Epistles of Paul. So this is a 3rd century papyrus. For some reason, I thought it was Codex Alexandrinus. So he has Konomia, which is it's sort of halfway between koinonia and oikonomia. And so when we look up earlier, we can see this picture here, and it has koinonia, clearly has it. So James White said, no, it has a definite article there, which it doesn't. I've got the little arrow there to prove that. And when you zoom in, that's exactly what it says. And so here we can see there is no definite article here. It just doesn't exist. So the koinonia is exactly what it says. So James White was denying that. And so Saunders was one of the guys I found in 1935 who was, he's just gone through and collated it that way. Where other people have collated it and said it says oikonomia. And I'm like, well, why would you say it says that? But at least he was just honest to say it says this, because that's how I'm reading it. But yeah, it's interesting that he's a friend of Hoskier. It's quite interesting. So anyway, I'll shut that down. Calvin says, I know that John Dee under Elizabeth I wrote a book conjuring good devils until they weren't. And the Gabriel speaking to Muhammad was definitely a devil that appears as an angel of light. So Calvin says, I had to look up Herman Hoskier and had no idea who he was. Man, I had a question for Nick, and I'm going to ask him as soon as I can remember what it was. It looks like you've swum around the bowl like a goldfish and you've forgotten what your own name is. I do that all the time. Okay, so let's see if he continues to talk about this spiritism. Okay, maybe I can type in spirit. There's only 41 pages here. Okay, spirit mediums and spirit guides. Okay. I declare that I die in the certainty of the continuality of life, both molecular and spiritual, attached to no particular school of thought, nor to any particular religion. Okay, so that's recorded in his will. So obviously he's a bit out there. But in love with all men striving towards the recognition of his birthright as part of an indivisible all life, which in reality constitutes the whole, so that he cannot die in any sense whatsoever. Many have scoffed at Hoskier's naivete for believing in spirits and theosophy, and have thereby written off his contribution to the discipline, etc. So I think that we have proven that he did have communication with spirit mediums. So footnote number 22 here. Okay, so that's up here. Okay, so that's going through some of these books, which Maurice Robinson talked about. What is Nirvana, etc. Let's look for the word spirit. Hoskier appeals to comparative religious studies and argues at length for the veracity of various forms of spirit communication, arguing that Eastern religions stand closer to the origins of an initial revelation between some, that's an interesting word, extramundi, creator and ruler, than do Christianity or Judaism. He examines side by side, for example, the Bhagavad Gita, portions of the New Testament, and spirit communication through a certain MDME. I'm not sure how you would even pronounce that. So yeah, interesting. This book also contains Hoskier's only explicit comments on what he calls spiritism or spiritualism and spirit communication, perspectives that also impinge on his text critical work in concerning the text. For Hoskier, incredulity in spirit phenomenon is simply and solely due to ignorance. Okay. Presence of readings divine from spirit communication. So I guess in a way, someone's whoever had written in the ETC blog the spirit testimony, they put that portion up where he's talking about, for what it's worth, etc. This person looked this up. So I think James Snap Jr. has looked at that and gone, well, on face value, he's saying, well, for what it's worth. But when you look at the background, he's saying it like for what it's worth. Someone contacted a spirit, and he's actually saying that this is evidence. So that's quite interesting. And then later on, he is involved in looking for evidence himself, which is very interesting. So I think we've proven that Herman Hoskier was involved with the occult. Okay, let's just continue through here. His analysis of patience worth spirit communications, noting also to us who study the comparative value of messages from beyond. Okay, so very interesting. Patience worth. Very interesting. I'm just wondering what, maybe you guys in the chat can tell me what else I should look for in a search in this document. I'll just go through and catch up on some of these comments. So people are just chatting away there, loving it. So yeah, I've looked up medium, I've looked up spirit. Maybe I can type in Textus Receptus. Just Textus. And I guess too, the thing is, there are a lot of people out there who defend the Textus Receptus who obviously aren't saved. You get people who are into baptismal regeneration, believe you have to be baptized to be saved. You've got people who are like Christadelphians. They don't believe in the Trinity, but they follow the King James to the T. Mormons follow the King James. So I guess it's like having someone who, saying that someone's in the occult and they're backing up the TR. Most people are ignorant of Hoskier. Like even when I had Mike Ferrando on my show the other day, he was like, I've never heard of this Hoskier guy. He couldn't even say his name. And I've known about Hoskier for years and years, but there are people out there who people just don't know of. Now, I think, someone like Dean Burgon he's a huge name in the text realm because of the Dean Burgon Society have popularized him as well in the Textus Receptus camp and also in the King James only camps. And also he's very well respected by the majority text guys. Like if I was to pick up this book by Pickering, he would probably mention Burgon 100 times. If I just even look up Burgon, there's references, page 15, 52 to 53, 59 to 60, 79 to 81. Just all the way through here, he's mentioning Dean Burgon. So I wonder if he even mentions Hoskier. Oh yeah, he does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be interesting to see what he says about Hoskier. But it does seem like Hoskier left enough information to prove that he is indeed an occultist. And so, so the person who contacted me on Facebook, which was just today. So I was just going to do a quick little study and show. So it was Joseph Armstrong was asking, and he asked and said, what is the story surrounding Hoskier seeking a medium for the provenance of a manuscript? What manuscript was it? What did he find out? Did he get pushed back for doing so? And where can I read more about it? So I think I've given enough information for someone to search more on this. Now, this is on academia. Let's visit this one. I think I actually read through this article in one video. There is no glory and no money in the work. So Hoskier on New Testament textual criticism. So this seems like it is part of that series by Alan. And this goes into his life. Basically, I'm pretty sure he was one of the founding guys for the International Monetary Fund, which is quite interesting, which explains why he had so much money and how he could get all the manuscripts of Revelation, how he could get them all photographed. Because what he would do is he would find out there's a manuscript of the book of Revelation somewhere. So he would get people to take photographs of that manuscript or transcribe it if they could, or he would buy the manuscript, which is quite interesting. So he had a lot of money and he spent his fortune doing this. So, which is quite an interesting thing. So I've read through this before. It was quite heady. There's a lot of information here, but he is an interesting person to look at and to think about. So here's his biographical sketch. And so that's on academia. So there's quite a lot of information about Hoskier. Interesting guy. So what should we conclude about Hoskier? Hoskier was probably not born again. I would say definitely not born again. And so if he's saying that there's, Buddhism has certain answers, and I just read through some of that material that's quoted from his book, and it's like it sounds like he's not really thinking that the Bible has all the answers to it. Maybe it is an answer, but it does seem like he was in touch with the occult, with this spirit realm, but he did a lot of collation of the book of Revelation, 200 manuscripts. Now, there's estimated that there's 350 around today. There's an extra 150 around since then, which is quite interesting. Okay, what else have we got here? That's that article. Herman Hoskier on Wikipedia. Christian Publishing House. Okay, I'm going to open that because I know that's that Andrews guy. I'm just wondering what he's saying. Maybe he'll talk about Hoskier. Okay, so that's that sort of cartoony thing of Hoskier with Latin and Coptic and Syriac and all sorts of books behind him. Yeah, so this is Edward Andrews. Yeah, so I was right about that. It looks like it's just maybe it's not. Yeah, it is. It is just a Wikipedia copy. So, yeah, and then he has his works. Yeah, what is Nirvana? And he's written that in 1930. In Tune with the Universe, The Back and Beyond. But who knows? Maybe he was a strong Christian and then reverted. Maybe did a Bart Ehrman. Who knows? I don't know. Have to study him a little bit more. But that looks like just a Wikipedia article with books by Andrews. I've gone through his stuff, chatted with him personally about his level of Greek speaking, and a few other things. And he is just pumping these books out. There's so many books that he's written, but obviously it's on the critical text side of things. So anyway, I'll shut that down. We don't need that open. Now I'll put this link here into the chat because that was the PDF that I was going through. I'll shut that down. Let's check some of these out. Okay, so that's Hoskier. He gets a mention. Hoskier. Herman Hoskier and the Future of Textual Scholarship of the Bible. Okay, yeah, so that's that book. €145. Ebook PDF is the same. Wow. I'll just see if I can see. Okay, conference, Herman Hoskier in the Future. So yes, this is probably what sparked it off. So 2017, a whole conference about Herman Hoskier and the ECM, because I guess they were doing the Book of Revelation, which has just come out. So they had to sort of know about Hoskier. But it just amazes me that they've got Jennifer Knuss there. I'm just like, why? Tommy Wasserman. Anyway, I might have to go back and check out if these are online. Herman Hoskier. Because sometimes these guys do a conference and none of it ends up online. It's more information, see the blogspot hchoskier.blogspot.ie, I think it is. hchoskier.blogspot. Blog has been removed. Okay. So that's another chapter. It does seem like all these chapters have been released, but I guess because the spicy one of Jan Kranz, he goes in depth about the occultism connections. So I guess that's their way of getting people to buy the book and spending money. Okay, that's not worth looking at anymore. Hoskier photos by Peter Gurry. More on Herman Hoskier controversy from an email from Maurice Robinson. The mustache is quite impressive, I must say. So this is 2017. I don't think I can attach photos or the like in reply segments, but you perhaps might want to see might want to post these on the main section of Hoskier or start another post entirely. Okay. Hoskier. Okay. So it looks like for a season they focused on Hoskier quite a lot. Okay, I'll shut those down. Call for papers. Okay, that looks more promising to lead us to all the information about that. Okay, so that's that blog spot that had disappeared. Maybe I can go here and Wayback Machine. I keep forgetting about Wayback Machine. It's the best. Let's check this out. Yes, we do have the Wayback Machine. Yes. All right, make it a little bit smaller so we can check it out. Okay, registration for, so I guess they're just calling for papers on this. This would be an interesting thing to go through before the Reformation Bible Society do their conference in August. Maybe I'll focus on this a little bit because I know a lot of people would be strapped for time trying to get their research in. So maybe what I can do is go through Hoskier, check and see, like check these things out and just fact check, some of what's been said by Jan Krans and others. And then, people can, but because the thing is, when people don't know much about Hoskier, they're just like, oh, apparently he collated all the manuscripts of Revelation and he's a TR guy. And then so you automatically go, well, it's positive. Where for the last 10 years, I've said he consulted spirit mediums. I can't remember exactly where I got that information from, but I was convinced about it. And so I started saying it. And I think tonight I've just sort of dug up some places that are online. And obviously some of these blogs and stuff just get deleted after a while. I remember there used to be so much in Yahoo groups that would come up, and now it's just all deleted. It's a real shame, actually. So okay. So it doesn't look like a huge blog. Okay, so this is Alan. So he's the one who wrote the book. And I guess the thing too, these guys have just been invited by this guy to speak there. If I was invited there, I'd probably speak there, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, if I was invited to the Kingdom Hall, on Wednesday night or something to speak, I'd go there and preach about Jesus being God and Jehovah. But yeah, interesting. So yeah, so I'll probably add more to my website about Hoskier, talk a bit more about his spiritual life. So that's my article of him at the moment. So I've just got this lovely picture of him there. And some basic information. He was good friends with Dean John William Burgon, which makes me wonder, because it does seem like he has a Christian upbringing, a strong Christian upbringing. Maybe he lost it in the end, which can happen. Okay. All right, where are these comments? Well, heaps of comments. Docky is in the house. Hilly Billy says, I'm not sure what we're looking for. Are we anywhere near the Witch of Endor in Samuel? I think what we're looking at is, people have said Westcott and Hort were involved in the occult. I think that's been proven now, and because some people just take things way overboard. Okay, so it's a bit like, saying, well, Hitler used to just, grind up old Ukrainian women in a blender and drink their blood and their brains for breakfast. It's like, well, that's not true, but it doesn't mean Hitler was a good guy. You know what I mean? And so people just exaggerate oftentimes. And so with Westcott and Hort, they were deeply compromised individuals. They worked with Unitarians. They defended Unitarian, or George Van Smith specifically. They had communion with him. The Church of England were like, how can you have communion with a Unitarian? And they defended this, and they were saying, if you kick him off the committee, we're going to leave as well, because they wanted to kick him off the committee because he's a heretic. And so these guys were deeply compromised. And so, but there was proof that there was seances that were attended by these individuals. And so, people bring this up and talk about it, and that's fine. And sometimes too, once like if someone's committed one murder, it doesn't make them a mass murderer, but it's like, well, they've already done it before, And I think with the Textual Confidence Collective of Mark Ward, he was downplaying this, and I think he actually thought that they hadn't done anything of the occult, because earlier on, he was just like, no, everyone's lying about them. And then when they went through and they looked at the stats, they went, hang on, they have done this. So they just had to sort of cover it up. And then they tried to say, well, Scrivener, because Scrivener's seen as a TR guy, because he just published it because he had to, because he was working for the same committee. And they said, we don't want all these marginal notes, just print a TR edition, and we'll put all the pesky little notes and data in there, rather than flood the margin with all these comments. And so he just did that. And then a lot of TR people feel that he's a Textus Receptus guy and tried to save the day and printed the true text and all this, where he's actually a text critic guy who I think made lots of mistakes. And I don't think he was as good in Greek as people make him out to be. He made quite a lot of mistakes, like pretty big blunders for a New Testament in his work on Beza's text. But he also wanted to delete so many verses. He was basically just a critical text guy. Maybe he wanted the last 12 verses of Mark in, maybe he wanted the Bricobae Adulterae in, but the vast majority, if you just read his plain introduction and go to the sections where he is talking about which verses should be deleted, you're like, okay, there's like 43 verses. And so, I know people who are critical text guys, and they're like, well, I want to delete this, and this, and I would put him in the same camp. So I guess the thing is, people have tried to grab people and put them on their side. So Hoskier is one of those guys where a lot of people don't know much about him. And even tonight, I'm like, okay, let's look through. And there's scattered material, but I think we've pieced together that he was involved with the occult. It seems like a lot of people from that era were. A lot of text critics were, which it's quite amazing because, people want to downplay these issues. I think they are important. Because when someone is involved with demonic spirits, there is usually a deception. Now, in my paranoid mind, in my conspiratorial mind, and I know Joseph, he'll probably watch this and love this section of it, maybe the whole majority text thing is it's a bit like controlled opposition. He have someone involved with the occult, like say the whole Dean Burgon thing. I know he came against Westcott and Horde and all the rest of it, but he started the majority text movement, and the majority text movement is like another option. It's like you got the Textus Receptus, which we're like, don't change it. It's a word of God, and then it's like, the majority text with 1,800 less words than the TR. It's a lot of changes, and so we're looking at it going, that's not good. But then, it's better than the critical text one. So sometimes the critical text guys, like say Dan Wallace, he calls majority text people modern day Marcionites, but he's sort of including TR people in there as well. James White does the same. He throws Hodges and Fasted into the King James only camp. It's like, that's weird. But it seems like that there's this third option now. So I guess it's a bit like if you've done the crime, instead of just having one other person who's like an option of like, well, they're a suspect, you've got two suspects. So people are like, I don't know who did. It's creating more confusion. Controlled opposition, maybe. It could be an organic thing that just came from Dean Burgon and his rejection of the Textus Receptus, Hoskier, following this type of thing. And also, Scrivener sort of being tagged along with being part of their camp when he was definitely just a critical text guy. And yeah, then I guess that sort of going through till now you've got majority text people who are said to be Textus Receptus people, and you've got a lot of Textus Receptus people who basically defend the TR from a majority text position. So when you just show them a minority reading, they're like, and they lose it. It's like, that's not how you do it, But yeah, it's a bit of a mishmash. It's a strange thing, but some of these majority text guys are really good on the data. Like I'm holding up Wilbur Pickering's material. If you want a really good non-King James only argument against Westcott and Horde, read that. You'll just read it and go, yeah, Westcott and Horde bad, So Calvin says, can you give a list of names that you've mentioned thus far who have mentioned Hoskier as an occultist? Okay, so Jan Kranz. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to double check things, because as soon as I went into it, it's like, Jan Kranz is saying it. And then there's basically been a book written about Hoskier, going from Hoskier to the ECM. Maurice Robinson has said it, and it seems like they are quoting in this book written about Hoskier his direct quotes from his own books like Nirvana and others, saying that he has followed this spirit called Patience and followed a spirit guide, and it's pretty messy. And so his books, What is Nirvana? So I've got that here in front of me, 1930, the back of Beyond. So these wouldn't be as popular, but they seem like they're more personal books written, and they're written later on in his life because he died in 1938. But it does seem like he was into spiritual occultism, I guess you call it. I don't know what you call it. Yes, non-Christian spirituality. And you can read all of his books at the Internet Archive. Maybe we should open one of these books. So Immortality, I'll crack that open. I know Codex B and its allies. I mean, yeah, D.A. Waite prints this book. Mortality, the new W, Codex W. Okay, it doesn't seem like Nirvana and the other books are there, but Immortality might be an interesting one to look at. Not sure why it's not loading. There we go. Comparative religions. Nothing could be clearer than the original conceptions of Chinese and Indian wisdom, which agree at a most distinct period. Okay. God to the Hindu was an indiscoverable essence. As to the Trinity of creative power, destructive power, mediatorial power existed in India as Brahm, Shiva, Vishnu. I'll go to halfway. It's so confusing. You don't know where he's going with it. Okay. So you don't know if he's just documenting other religions or if he's promoting them. Oneness and unity of the originating power of the great affirmative I am, and so He's quoting scripture. I can't just look at it, and he writes in a distinct way. So you have to it's like with his Revelation one, you start reading it and you get caught in it, and you keep reading it, and you're trying to get to a certain answer that he's offered a question, and you're trying to get to that answer, and then he's asked 3 more questions. So you find you've read 20 pages and you're like, just tell me, and so that's what I find with his writing. It's okay, he's mentioning Jesus here, but he's quoting someone. So talking about reincarnation. Maybe he's got a summary at the back. Let's just try that. Docky says it's an interesting deep dive. Calvin says, yes, it is. I've lost track of everyone mentioned to this point, Docky. Hilly Billy says, my head is cocked sideways and my tongue is hanging out. Calvin said, don't believe all that nonsense, Docky. His head ain't turned sideways, but his tongue does hang out from time to time. Oh, dear. Okay, so Calvin says, what Nick just mentioned about info being taken down off the web is sad. There is an Alexandrian library fire every day on the web. Yeah. Calvin said, yeah, that's part of the plan. Get rid of the books, make everything digital. then hide the digital info. Brilliant, really, but very wicked and evil. Yeah. Someone was mentioning about the sort of like the paywall at the British Library. Like they say it was a British person, and they were saying the British Library say that they're using, you know, taxpayer money to, you know, keep things preserved and for research, but you can't access things in the library. So it's like, what's the point? You know, and that's one of the things I've often thought about Dean John William Burgon's quotations of the early church writers, where he has 86,000 quotations. I mean, someone should just go through and at least photograph that book. It's talked about quite a lot. It's really well known, but no one's read it. No one that I know has ever read it. You might be able to go and visit it and look at a page or two, but Calvin says, Nick has oft used Orwell's 1984 as an analogy. I thought I heard Metzger's name, but must have been someone else. Matt Singleton is in the house. So I'm going to have Matt this weekend. He's coming on, and we're going to chat about some interesting things. I mean, he's just preached on the rapture. So, all right, so that's the back page of the book. Let's see if he's got a summary. All right, he's got biblical quotations, which is very interesting. Okay. So I guess that's the thing. He's educated in textual criticism, linguistics, and theology. And so that's why he has these skills, you know, and it doesn't mean that you're saved, born again. But he may have been a Christian at some time. Yeah, and it seems that Hoskier's criticisms of Westcott and Hort were more textual and not sort of spiritual or theological. Okay. Look, he's quoting the Bhagavad Gita. I always struggle saying that. Bhagavad Gita. Like, why would you quote that at the end? It seems weird. I mean, he's quoting Acts or actually not Acts. Yeah, Acts. The LXX, Pythagoras. And he says, the Book of Wisdom summarizes the matter thus. The ungodly said, reasoning with themselves, but not aright. Our life is short and dreary, and in the depth of a man there is no remedy, but God made not death, for God created man to be immortal, yea, to know thy power is the root of immortality, wisdom. And he's got like Krishna saying these things. It is weird, man. And it's not like the last thing that he quotes is the Bhagavad Gita. So it's, yeah, it looks, It even looks weirder than I thought. Like, anyway, I'll catch up with some of these comments, and I'll just keep shutting some of these things down. We've got the Hoskier grave site. That's interesting. My friend just is on the news. His house burnt down. And you know what was really amazing with this? Like, it sort of sent a bit of a chill down my spine when I saw it. He sent me a photo. I'll just quickly show you this. So this is the house. It's burnt to a crisp. Now, this is like a kitchen door, and it's obviously had a piece of paper over the middle of the door there, hiding these numbers, written in text. What kids are like, teenagers, and so this Volkov, that's me. I would have been maybe 14, 15, maybe 16 at the time, and that was my phone number in Melbourne, Victoria. And it was Volkov, Nikolai Volkov. I think he was a wrestler or something. So it was, and we were banned from seeing each other, me and my friend. And so we had police orders out to not see each other. So that was like code for my name. But the whole house burnt down, and then it's just my phone number there. It's just weird because I've got lots of memories in this house. And anyway, apparently he's on the news now. So I've got to tune into that after this, I guess. Which is a pretty heavy thing, having your house burned down. And so there is a GoFundMe for that on my Facebook that they've made. So I don't have anything to do with that, but I just sort of put it up there because lots of my friends know him as well. So, okay. Matt says, thanks, Nick. We're dealing with the topic of intuition, and that will wrap up a series on epistemology. Anyone else notice? Okay, just reading through some of these comments. Yeah, that's freaky, Nick. Yeah, I thought it was pretty wild. And, we've been like best mates for years and years and years. And so, anyway, I'll keep shutting things down. Hoskier and the spirit world, that can go. Conference, Hoskier, Young Krans, Hoskier. This weird book by Hoskier, that was weird. And maybe there is a link to his other works. No, what is Nirvana? The Back of Beyond. Maybe it's on Hathi Trust. Interesting. Signpost. The author of In Tune with the Universe. Published 1934. What we are implying forms part of all true religions, groping up to a certain point. The mystic, whether Christian, Mussulman, Yogan, or other, yields himself in an ecstasy to some greater power, but generally, it looks pretty weird. I and the Father are a unit. Not even the Father and I are one, but I and the Father are a unit. Which was considered blasphemy in those days. Will it be considered differently today? I don't know. Is he just appealing to other religions and going, well, they're teaching similar things to the Bible, and then saying the Bible's true. You know. And it's one of those things, you know, is it worth reading through all this? But I guess you have to know what he's on about. Anyway, at least I know I can just access that from Wikipedia. I'll shut that down. And that's my page on Hoskier. I'll shut that down. Oh, we've got some more hidden little ones here. Shut that down, that down, that down, that, and that. And I think that is our program. So it's gone for 2 hours and 12 minutes on this topic. So that was for Joseph Armstrong. He'll probably wake up in the morning and go, oh, I've got a 2-hour video to watch. And hopefully that will convince him of the occult connection between that Hoskier had. And yeah, a lot of, you know, it's not like King Jamesy thing. It's not a TR thing. It's not even a critical text thing. Maurice Robinson saying the same thing. So I think everyone is in pretty much agreement. It did seem like James Snap was not really gelling on that. When I first was confronted with this information, I just went, yeah, well, there you go. And I think it was Peter Gurry who talked about it first. But anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. God bless you. And I will, what's today? Monday. I mightn't do anything until the weekend, but we'll see. Maybe something will come up. So God bless you guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.